اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد. إذ يتلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد. إذ يتلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. وجاءت سكرة الموت بالحق ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد. ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد. وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد. لقد كنت في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to weekly Tuesday nights program. Inshallah, before we start Dua Tawassul, and then after that, the speech by Sheikh Salim, inshallah, we're going to have a quick announcement. As mentioned, tonight we're going to have the Tuesday nights program with Sheikh Salim Yusufali. And then on Thursday night, inshallah, we're going to have a Dua Kumail program followed by the speech by Maulana Abidi. On Friday, inshallah, we are going to have our weekly Friday prayer program that's going to be held at the parking lot at noon at Saba Center. And then, inshallah, for more details or to stay tuned with the rest of the programs, inshallah, you can check out the website And with that, inshallah, we are going to start the dua Tawassul for tonight. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الذكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. Then ask for your hajat. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقدي وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all the marhumin.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that all of you are doing well. May Allah reward you for your good intentions in joining us on this evening. Inshallah, in this Tuesday night program, first of all, taqabbal Allah, may Allah accept your amal, and thank you to the brother who recited. May Allah accept his recitation. Um, inshallah, tonight we would like to continue our ahkam session programs. We had begun 4 weeks ago by talking about the ahkam of tahara and najasa, and we're going to continue from there. But before we get there, I want to just give a short reminder, a maw'idah, inshallah, for myself, for all of you, and then we're going to dive into the ahkam. And after the ahkam presentation, just like usual on Tuesdays, we have our kahoot. So inshallah, you guys will be joining us for that as well. While we're doing the ahkam presentation, should you have any questions or you need any clarifications, please do join us on our other platform, which is Slido, slido.com/Saba or #Saba. And there you can easily add your questions, and inshallah, I'll be taking a look at that as I'm going through the presentation. So, brothers and sisters, it is the month of Rajab. It is the spiritual season of the year has begun. Inshallah, we're able to take advantage of the great opportunities that we have to worship. In these months, the heart is more inclined to worship. It's easier to find that inclination to talk to Allah, to whisper to Him, to present our needs to Him. And the Ahlul Bayt have given us so many ways and means to be able to do so. This Thursday night will be the first Thursday night of the month of Rajab. And given that it's a holy month, and given that Thursday night is the holiest of nights of the week, then naturally this is a great time for us to, inshallah, set aside some time to put in a bit of more effort into worshiping Allah and seeking forgiveness from Him. In particular, there is a riwayah about this night being Laylat al-Raghaib. Raghaib is the plural of Raghiba, and Raghiba means one of two things. One of them is when somebody has they have a request for something. It's called like a petition. They want to really present something. They really want it. That's like a Raghiba. And the other meaning of Raghiba is when there's generous gifts that are being given. And so both of these are happening on this night, inshallah, that it's a night of presenting our case to Allah, presenting our petitions to Him, and also of getting His generous grants, inshallah. How do we take advantage of it? Well, first and foremost, the way for getting anything from Allah Ta'ala and getting His special mercy is by falling um, into obedience and falling into subservience to Him, and doing our duties of servants of His, being thankful to Him, by monitoring ourselves, by controlling ourselves, by um, doing our responsibilities. Above and beyond that, there are special amal which are recommended for Thursday, fasting on that day. And then also there is a special salah which is recommended. Inshallah, on that night, Maulana Abidi will be leading us through the amal, and he'll explain more. But by that time, in a way, it would have kind of been late for those of you who want to prepare from beforehand. So I just wanted to mention it from tonight. The hadith is a very beautiful hadith. In it, and by the way, this amal is quoted by great scholars like Sayyid ibn Tawus and Allama Majlisi. So among the virtues of this amal is the forgiveness of many sins, and it is mentioned that when someone has offered this prayer, when they die on the first night of their burial, when it's a new experience, and it's a different dimension that we're not used to. So naturally, it's a time that we're in need of special company. So in the hadith, it says that on the first night of his burial, Allah sends the reward for it to greet him in the most beautiful of forms, with a bright and gracious face, speaking in an eloquent manner, it says to him, "My friend, congratulations for having been delivered from every hardship and suffering. Who are you?" he asks it. "By God, I've never seen a more beautiful face, never heard a sweeter speech, nor smelled a better fragrance than yours." It says to him, "I am the reward of the prayer you offered on such and such a night, of such and such a month, in such and such a year. I have come tonight to fulfill my debt to you, to give you company in your solitude, and to relieve you of your loneliness. When the trumpet is sounded, I will shade you on the plain of resurrection. So rejoice, for you will not be missing your Lord's grace." Now, of course, these type of ahadith, they describe the maximum reward that somebody can receive. They describe the reward that somebody who performs this type of amal and then acts upon the consequences, meaning that it's not just that we say to God during this process that I seek your forgiveness and I turn to you, but then we turn to a different God and we turn to our own idols, our own pet idols. Of course, not, inshallah, not stone idols, but the idols of the passions of our lower self. We wouldn't do that after performing this amal. Then that's the type of reward that would be waiting for somebody. But it's such an amazing promise, and inshallah, we want to take advantage of this opportunity. Maybe it's a time to make up some qada fasts if somebody has those. Maybe if you don't have qada fast, then you could consider doing a mustahab fast. But remember, and I'm telling myself, and inshallah, all of us can keep this in mind, that we have a general principle within the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt about performing mustahabat, and a number of our Imams alayhim assalam have mentioned this in various forms. لا قربة للنوافل إذا أضرت بالفرائض. There is no proximity, there's no gaining closeness to God through extra acts if they are going to affect the obligatory acts. Meaning what? Meaning that, let's say that somebody in their rush to perform mustahabat, they end up, let's say trampling on their spouse's rights. They end up, let's say, acting in a meaner way to their family members because, let's say, they're grumpy because they've been fasting the whole day. Or in some ways, it just affects their ability to, like, let's say, their good akhlaq, their performance of their wajibat. Then it would be better to actually leave it aside and to focus on the primary duties. But sometimes, at the same time, these type of opportunities can also be a great boost for us. And sometimes by setting aside that time, removing our distractions and trying a little bit extra hard, then it can have a profound effect on us. And it can give us the motivation to, inshallah, continue. In this month of Rajab, there's so many different amal and so many different opportunities. Inshallah, do try to at least take advantage of something, even if it's small, and regularly performing that. We hope that Allah Ta'ala gives us the tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, so brothers and sisters, now we are going to move to the ahkam portion of our presentation. I'm going to request our wonderful tech team here at Saba to show the slideshow. Okay, so we are continuing the explanation of rules of tahara and najasa. This is part 2. Once again, if you would like to contribute your questions or you need clarifications, then please do so on slido.com. Inshallah, you guys benefited from Maulana Abidi's ahkam presentation that he gave last Tuesday. I think it was last Tuesday, where he was talking about taklif, and then he's going to be talking about taqlid, inshallah, in the near future. And from my side, we're going to be continuing with tahara and najasa, and then go on from there. Okay, so just to remind that most of the content that I'm presenting is taken from this book known as Risala-e Musawwar. It is a fairly new effort. As of now, it hasn't been translated into English, but I am trying to present most of the important points from that book, and then adding some practical examples from our lives and kind of the things that we face in our experiences here living in the West. Just a reminder on some definitions. So najis, something which is ritually impure. Najisul ayn, something which is inherently najis. Allah Ta'ala has created it, and it, of course, there's hikmah and wisdom behind it. But when it comes to our interaction with it, we have to realize that it is najasul ain, and there's nothing that can be done to change it and to take away it being najis unless it completely transforms into something else. That's the second term. The third one is kur. Kur is a large quantity of water. We said last time that it's roughly speaking 1 1/4 bathtubs or more. And qalil is not a large quantity of water, so less than that amount. For example, if you have a glass of water. If we also mentioned last time that if you turn on the tap, the water that comes out, it has the ruling of being kur because it's connected to the groundwater, and so all those rules which apply to that would apply to the water that comes from the tap. I've mentioned that because I'm going to be using these terms as we go along, inshallah. Now, um, what I decided to do was I looked carefully at the questions that the audience had put up last time, which was we had done this 4 weeks ago, and I thought that we could focus on addressing those questions, but still taking the approach of trying to cover the ahkam. I'm just kind of moving some of the lessons like here and there in order to talk about those issues, which I know that people are facing more than the others. Um, I felt that that was kind of maybe more appropriate than just forging along in the typical manner. Whatever we've missed, though, inshallah, I will be coming back and covering that. So last time we were talking about the rules of water and what's a purifier and what's not a purifier. Tonight we want to talk about two of the najasul ain things, two of those things which are inherently najis. One of them is alcohol, wine, and beer, and the second one is dogs and pigs. And we're going to talk about the practical aspects of that. So when it comes to alcohol, wine, and beer, and I will be describing the difference between them and how they're made, and because it's important when it comes to the rulings. So consuming alcoholic beverages is a major sin, and according to some traditions, it is the biggest of sins. Sometimes, we might think that that's just so obvious, and why do we even need to talk about it? But unfortunately, sometimes when we are in a culture where it's just so normal, um, and maybe for whatever reason it hasn't been emphasized enough at a young age, then maybe people don't necessarily realize the significance of it. Like alcohol is something which, you know, is those who are part of the process are cursed. Like in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did la'an on 10 groups of people with respect to wine. Not just those who drink it, not just those who buy it, not just those who sell it, but those who plant the seeds for the grapes, those who grow them, those who harvest them, those who press them, those who drink them, transports them, receive them, so on and so forth. And we can add to that, those who advertise this, right? Those who, let's say, promote ads for it on their websites, or those who are part of making deals for and doing like projects for companies that are selling this type of like let's say alcohol, like even to that level, those who let's say are stocking up an aisle and putting wine bottles and beer cases in their places, that would also contribute towards this act of the type of things that the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning in the hadith. Now, is it the case that alcohol is haram to drink because it's intoxicating? Well, yes, that's part of the reason. Well, what if somebody has a high tolerance for alcohol, meaning that they can drink, a glass or two and nothing happens to them? Is it okay for them to drink? The answer is no. What if somebody only wants to taste it, just drink one drop, which wouldn't intoxicate anybody? No. Even if it's one drop, even if it's 5 drops, whatever it is, any consumption of an alcohol beverage is haram, even if it doesn't make somebody intoxicated. Now, that's very important to emphasize because as we go along, we're going to see that the ruling of tahara and najasa is not the same as the ruling of it being prohibited to consume. Why is that? Because we know that there are things which can be tahir, but they're haram to consume. Okay, for example, drugs. Somebody has like a bunch of dried cocaine powder, and cocaine powder is not najis, but of course it's haram to consume it. So you can have that. On the other hand, you could have something which is, uh, let's say you have something like which has become najis, like I don't know, somebody cutting an orange and they're slicing an orange and they cut their finger and the blood goes all over the orange. Well, now the orange became najis to eat, even though an orange isn't normally najis. So what's najis and what's halal, sometimes they don't always match. And that's why, as we go along, just keep this in mind that if there's something which is tahir, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's halal to consume it. Now, um, I have to talk a little bit about how these things are made, and I know it's a little bit unpleasant. Believe me, I wasn't enjoying doing this research because it's kind of like, really, do I really need to look into this? But brothers and sisters, like the rulings, in order to understand them, um, we have to go to a little bit of the science behind that, and then it'll become, inshallah, very clear for us. If you focus your attention on the left side of this picture that you're seeing on your screen here, you'll see a picture of how wine is made. And then on the right side, you see how spirits are made and how beer is made. And these are three different types of alcoholic beverages. By the way, I didn't know that until like today when I was doing the research for it. So, it's one of those things though that maybe you wish that you kind of question, is that really worth knowing? So anyways, there's three types of alcohol. There's wine, there's beer, and then there's spirits. Okay, well, what's the difference between them? Well, very simple. Okay, if you look at the left side, actually it's not simple because the processes can get really complex, and then even the machinery that they create to generate these things, like, wow, there's like factories and there's like super advanced technology and everything to do this in a certain way. But anyway, if we just make it simple, then if you look at wine comes from grapes. Grapes are harvested and then they are fermented. And eventually, through the process of fermentation, when they add yeast and the yeast interacts with the sugar from the grapes, it turns into a alcoholic beverage, which is called wine. Okay, and that wine is barreled up and bottled up, and then people do what they do with it. Okay, that's wine. Now, if we look at beer on the right lower, I wonder if I'll be getting calls saying that, why are you talking about beer on a program? Like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Anyways, inshallah, you guys know my intentions here, right? So, beer, if you look at it, it starts with actually with grain and uh, barley in particular, and that barley is milled and mashed and then brewed and then cooled and fermented and matured. So it's very similar to the way that wine is made, except for the starting thing. Here you start with grapes, and there you start with barley. But spirits, on the other hand, is where you have another step, which is called distilling. So in the distilling process, that substance which is fermented, there's a gas which escapes from it. And that gas is something which then they take up and then they turn it into a liquid. They liquefy that gas. And that liquid, that gas, the main component of it is something called ethanol. And from there, they might do another distillation in order to come up with different types of then drinkable substances. So there's three things: spirits, wine, and beer. Now, in this next chart right here, you can see that there's two types of alcohol. One of them is distilled. Distilled, as we just talked about, is that which comes from the gas that escapes when the fermenting process is taking place. And there's others which are brewed. The brewed ones are the other two that we saw, the one that comes from the grapes, wine, and then the one which comes from the barley, which is the beer. And then there's a couple others. There's sake, and then there's something else that you can see there, which comes from sticky rice or wheat. So there's two categories: that which is brewed and that which is distilled. Okay, now why this? There is a purpose for me explaining this, because it has to do with the rulings. All right. So first of all, if you look at the bullet points, everything that is alcohol, in and of itself, if we're talking about a glass of alcohol, it doesn't matter if it was distilled or it was brewed or whatever. If it's alcohol, okay, you can't drink it, right? It's haram. It's intoxicating. You can't drink it. Okay, now, in particular, when we're talking about tahara and najasa, brewed alcohol from grapes and barley is najis. And the two examples, like that we have is like wine and beer. That's najis. Okay, if it's brewed alcohol. Okay, now, um, that's according to all the marjas. What about other types of alcohol? Are they najis as well? So, um, let's say, for example, there's one of the other ones that I mentioned, the distilled alcohols, or let's say that there is another one which we're going to be talking about soon, which is ethanol alcohol. Is that najis? The answer is that the following: that according to Ayatul Sistani, he says no, they're not najis, but they're still haram to consume. So if it's an alcohol, according to Ayatul Sistani, if it's an alcohol that is not coming from grapes being fermented and brewed, and it's not coming from barley being fermented and brewed, then even though it's haram to consume it, it's not najis. Okay? According to Ayatollah Khamenei, Hafidhahumullah, he says that if in its original form it's a liquid and it's an intoxicating liquid, then it would be najis as well. Okay, now where's the practical application of that? It's going to come up in our next slide. So, by the way, I think I mentioned this in our first session that we in these sessions I'm going to be focusing on the rulings of these two marjas. Not that there aren't other marajit, but these are two that are probably most commonly followed, and we do have to limit the scope in order to be able to make the material understandable and be able to get through it, inshallah. So when we're talking about, let's apply this to something called industrial alcohol, also known as ethyl alcohol, also known as ethanol. You can see, for example, there's a bottle here in which it says that there's vanilla and it's extracted in 35% alcohol. Okay, that alcohol is ethyl alcohol. It's not wine, it's not beer, it's ethyl alcohol. Where does ethyl alcohol come from? It comes from corn or biomass through a process of distillation. And it can be turned into spirits, like the ones we mentioned earlier, excuse me, and you can use corn or another substance. It is used in food products like vanilla extract. Now, is it najis? No, according to Adl Fatwa. Why? Because it's not made from brewed barley or grapes. For Ayatollah Khamenei, there's 2 points here that we need to mention. Number one is that it's derived from a gas form, not a liquid form. And secondly, after the distillation, the liquid is poisonous. It's not intoxicating. Why? Because 100% ethanol is deadly. If somebody drinks it, they're gone, right? It's not about somebody drinks it and they have some fun. No, what they do is apparently in some states they don't even sell it because it's so dangerous. In those states where they do sell it, the people who buy it, they're supposed to really dilute it with other stuff to make it. And even then, it's not clear what kind of effects it has and all that. Okay, so I feel like I know too much about this now. Anyways, inshallah, I'll forget some of it later on. But anyway, the point is that these 2 points, if we look back at Ayatollah Khamenei's ruling, he says that it's najis if in its original form it's liquid and intoxicating. But here we can see that when it comes to industrial alcohol or ethanol, neither is it from a liquid, nor is it the case that when it forms a liquid, that liquid is intoxicating, because it's actually, if somebody drinks it, it's poisonous to them. So according to the source that we've been using mostly for this information, or at least at the core of the information, it's not najis. Even though, of course, it doesn't mean that somebody can drink it. It's not najis. Now, practical example. All right, a lot of ice cream, cakes, and cookies are made using vanilla extract. Vanilla extract contains alcohol. Are those goods halal to eat or not? Well, let's apply what we just learned right here. As you can see in the picture there, somebody's baking a nice cream cheese type of cake type of thing, with a little vanilla flavor essence there. Okay, and anyway, so it says, first of all, when something is haram to consume and najis, like wine or beer, diluting it doesn't change the ruling. It's still haram and najis. So if that spoon had a teaspoon of wine and that was being added in, X, no, that would be najis, haram, no go. Okay? Now, if it was a teaspoon of beer, same thing. But let's say it's not. Let's say it's a teaspoon of vanilla extract, which contains some small amount of alcohol in it, ethyl alcohol. Let's go to the second box. when something is haram but not najis, if it is added as a trace amount, like less than 2% to something, or diluted to the point where it would virtually disappear, it would become mustahlak, as the fatawa say. It's basically gone. The resulting product would be halal. It doesn't affect it. Okay, if it was by itself, if somebody were to like take that vanilla extract and drink it by itself, it would be haram. And by the way, um, probably not good for somebody either to do that. And not only that, like it's haram. Okay, bad things would happen. So don't do it. I'm not recommending that. Okay, so but if they take it and they mix that 1 teaspoon into a large batter, then it's just a small, like less than 2%, then it's not going to affect it. It still would be halal to eat based on what we talked about. Now, that makes to the last point here, the conclusion. Vanilla extract is haram to consume on its own, but when added as a trace amount to batter, the resulting product is halal. So what that means is that when it comes to those cakes and those cookies and ice cream, then if it's just, if you see vanilla extract on the thing, it doesn't mean that it's haram. And in all these goods, like the way that they make them is they put a trace amount. I mean, nobody goes and douses something with vanilla extract because then it would turn into something else. Okay, at least as far as my limited baking knowledge is concerned. So that is the ruling on vanilla extract. Let's look at another example. Somebody, let's see, they have a cold and a flu, and they think that by having cough medicine is going to somehow help them. Which, by the way, you can talk to the doctors about their opinion on it, but there are those who say that these don't help at all. But anyways, let's say that it's this or some other medicine which actually does help, okay, and it has an alcohol content of 10%. Okay, so now what? Now what do we do? Okay, now in the vanilla extract thing, we know that it had a low amount of alcohol in it. And then when you're taking that and then you're adding just a small amount to a batter and you're mixing it in, then basically it's disappearing. Well, what are you going to add the cold medicine to, right? You're not going to cook it in a batter, right? I mean, you want to drink it. So what happens there? Pretty much there, the alcohol contained in it is a significant amount, and consuming alcohol is haram. So it would only be permissible to consume this medicine when there is no other option. Okay. Inshallah, I hope that's clear. Now let's look at another example. Now this one comes up, right? Hand sanitizer gel. If you look at the back of your hand sanitizer, unless you're buying like organic, homemade, made from essential oil hand sanitizer, probably it has alcohol in it. If you're using wipes, they probably have alcohol in them. Maybe you didn't know that before, but now you know. Okay, so then now you know, well, what does that mean? Now, can I use it or not? Well, last time I checked, I've never seen a hand sanitizer where they use wine. I've never seen one where they make it out of beer. Okay, if they're using isopropyl alcohol, ethyl alcohol, ethanol, etc. And from what we've learned, you would have come to the realization that even though it's haram to drink that, now by the way, when they make the industrial version of it, they add something to it. It's called denaturalization, which makes it so that it takes away the intoxicating property of it. And if somebody were to drink it, they would actually have to call poison control because it's basically poisonous. But anyway, for the reasons that we mentioned, even though it would be haram to consume in any type of intoxicating form that would be safe, it's not najis. And so it's okay if somebody uses it. They don't need to, like, let's say, wash their hands with water if they want to say their prayers after using it. Okay. So the resolution for Salah, generally speaking, my clothes and body have to be tahir. According to Aidul Sistani's fatwa, alcohol made from something other than barley and grapes is haram to consume but tahir. According to Atul Khamenei's fatwa and the reference cited previously, ethyl alcohol is not najis, so washing my hands wouldn't be necessary. Now, we talked about wine, beer, alcohol. The second one we're going to talk about, inshallah, is pigs and dogs. Not too much to say, and we're not going to talk about everything related to the rulings, but I just want to mention a couple of things related to especially the questions that were asked in our last session. So dogs and pigs, dead or alive, are najasul ayn. That means that every part of them is najis. It can be a wet part, it can be a dry part. They can be alive, they can be dead, every part of it. So, for example, it can be the case that if my hand is wet and I go and pet the dog, then if the wetness is such that wetness would transfer, then even though the part of the dog I'm wiping is dry, my hand would become najis. On the other hand, if the dog comes and stiffs me with its wet nose, and its wet nose, let's say, touches a part of my clothing, that part of my clothing would become najis. It doesn't matter whether dry or wet. If that wetness is transferred, then it would become najis. Pigs the same way. Now, one point that sometimes people don't realize is that even though dogs are najisul ain, those animals which are related but they fall into different species, they would not be, I don't know if it's species or it's a family or whatever it would be in the biological classification, but they wouldn't be najis. So let's say wolves, coyotes, foxes, they're not najis. Now, their bodily wastes would be najis, but they themselves would not be najisul ain. So technically, let's say there's a wolf and the wolf comes and licks your hand, which, by the way, I don't think you should be letting wolves lick your hand, but let's say that ever were to happen, then it wouldn't be najis. Okay, so lick your hand. Now, but there's a separate ruling that we talked about when it comes to when you're doing your salah, whether it be a wolf or whether it be a cat, any animal that cannot be slaughtered and eaten. Those animals, if there's any part of them that's on the body or the skin while praying, then that would be it would be a barrier for the prayer to be correct. And so let's say the wolf came and it left a wet mark on, and that wet mark didn't just evaporate, it's still there. Maybe it was caked onto like the clothes or onto the skin, that would be a problem. Okay, now let's say that this is the last slide I have for tonight. Let's say there's a container that has become najis. How can somebody go about making it tahir? Okay, so what I mean by container here is like a bowl, a pail, kind of like something that was left out, where you have some animal coming, like a dog or a pig, and they're, let's say, licking it or drinking water out of it. Or let's say that there's a cup that was used to serve wine, or some other type of najasa was put into some type of container. How do we go about cleaning it? So let's go through from the top here. Okay, if you have a dog, and there's two cases. One of them is that a dog licked or drank from it. They licked the inside of it or they drank from it. Or they touched it in some other way. For example, they jumped into it, okay, or they, mm, some of the dog hair came into that container. In that case, you have to, in both cases, first you have to clean it with pure earth. Okay, you take pure earth, for example, dirt, sand that's pure. You take it and you completely clean the inside of that container or that glass or that bowl with that earth, like all around. And then you kind of, like, imagine you're doing like a dry clean, not the kind that you go to the store for, but like the kind that you're doing yourself. It's like, imagine like this is a bunch of like soap that you're kind of like rubbing into everything. So you rub that pure earth all around and you dump it out. And then you wash it. You wash it either twice or 3 times, depending on in what way the dog had interacted with it. If it was wine, then you wash it 3 times, or better to do it 7 times, but you don't have to use earth. If it was a pig, then you have to wash it 7 times. So 7 times, it can be qalil water, it can be kur water 7 times. If something else not just was put in it. So for example, let's say that, I don't know, like let's say by mistake, I don't know, somebody bought some meat that was, it's actually from an animal that wasn't slaughtered in a halal way. The meat is najis. They started cooking it in a pot, and then they realized that, oh, okay, I didn't realize it was najis. And so, or let's say somebody's cutting the carrots, and then they happen to, get a cut on their finger, and a drop of blood falls into that pot. So now they want to clean it. Well, what do? They wash it 3 times with qalil water or 1 time with kur water. And kur water here means, like I said before, you can just open up the tap and just wash it once, or you put it in the dishwasher. But Ayatollah Sistani says that it's ihtiyat wajib to wash with 3 times with kur water as well. Okay, so that's if a container, and so this comes up. This is practical, right? This is real life. These things do happen, whether it be blood or whether it be some other najasa. Sometimes they fall into containers, and we want to wash them. Now, let's say it's not a container; it's just like somebody's hand. Okay, like a dog comes and they lick the hand. Do we have to do we have to first wash our hands with earth, like the dry wash, and then with water? No, that that dry earth, the dry tahir earth washing only applies to containers and utensils, like stuff that you put stuff into. It doesn't apply to other things. So in that case, let's say I would have to remove the ain and najis. Let's say, for example, the dog's saliva is on my hand. I first remove it and then I have to wash it. Okay, and then that would make it tahir. So with that, I'm going to take a look at our Slido to see if there's any questions, and after that, inshallah, we will start our Kahoot. Okay. Okay, so there's one question about how to treat food or medicine that has gelatin in them. That's a good question. Inshallah, I will be covering it at some point. So I'll just give a brief answer right now, and inshallah, at a later time, we can cover it. Gelatin, if gelatin appears, so first of all, what is gelatin? Gelatin is taken, from animal skin or animal bones. It can be from pigs. It can be from other animals, and it goes through some process in order to turn into like this jello-like substance that is then used for different types of food. Um, Now, of course, if the animal that was slaughtered was done so in Islamic way, then the gelatin from the animal would also be okay to eat. And that's why, let's say you buy marshmallows that are made from, let's say from a Muslim country, for example, Pakistan, okay, or Turkey. Well, there, one of the rulings we have is that when some meat product comes from a Muslim bazaar, then you can assume that it's halal, and therefore the gelatin will also be halal. But when it just says gelatin and you don't have that, verification of where it came from, you don't know whether the animal was slaughtered halal in a halal manner or not. In that case, the ruling is the same as when it comes to meat. That when it comes to meat, it's not like tahara. In tahara, everything is tahir until it's proven najis. But when it comes to meat, it's not halal to eat until it's established that it is halal to eat. And so the same thing when it comes to gelatin as well. So in that case, when it comes to like food with gelatin, then it would have to be avoided if somebody knows that has gelatin. If somebody doesn't know, um, like they're not sure. They're like, I don't know. I haven't checked the ingredients. I don't know if it has gelatin or not. Then fine, they can eat it. And if somebody finds out, they don't need to tell other people. In fact, it's better in most cases they don't trouble other people. But if somebody knows that has gelatin and they don't know that that gelatin is from a halal sourced animal, then it would be problematic to eat it. Okay. Same thing with medicine as well, unless, of course, this is the only thing. Sometimes there's no other way out, and it's a matter of darura. They don't have another option. However, in many cases, patients can consult with the medical care practitioner whom they're consulting with, and usually they can find alternatives that don't have the gelatin in them. There's another question about kombucha. I had done the research for that once, but it was a bit complicated. I don't have everything just in my memory at this point. So inshallah, at a later session, I'll dig that up and then I can share it with you. Okay. So there was a question here after Ayatollah Khamenei. According to Ayatollah Khamenei, is 70% isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol, is it najis or not? The I guess you can show it maybe. If you want, you can show it if you want the question. Yeah, this was in ideas. I was looking at ideas. So the summary of that discussion that we had is that because of two reasons. Number one is that isopropyl alcohol comes from a gas, not from a liquid. And then even the liquid form, it's something which is not intoxicating. It's actually deadly. It is not najis. When we apply the ruling, it's not najis, even it's from Ayatollah Khamenei. Okay. And the question, if a pig goes near you, do you have to wash yourself? No. Okay. If you become najis, for example, with a wet hand you touch the pig, then your hand becomes najis. Before you pray, you'd have to wash your hand. But just because it comes near you, you don't have to. Okay. And dogs and wolves are of the same group, so why is one najis and the other not? You're right that they are related, but there are differences between them. And uh, Allah, in His, He's the one who created us, and He's the one who created dogs, and He's the one who created wolves and other animals, and He has put down these guidelines and these barriers, like literally, like the in reality, a dog being najis creates a barrier as to how close somebody can become with somebody who's conscientious, somebody who cares about practicing and about uh, ritual cleanliness, and they care about angels being in their home. There is a barrier that's created when we know that dogs are najis, and when we're told that angels don't go into that home in which there is a dog. Um, Allah knows the wisdom behind that. Um, most people don't have wolves as pets, and you know, it's very difficult to manage that. And anyway, there are things which go even beyond just, you look at the shape of the animal, and it's not based on those type of things. There's other considerations there. And there's a question: can we do niyyah of qada fasting for mustahab fasts recommended for the month of Rajab, or even for namaz shab, etc.? I think we'll take this question, and then inshallah we'll move on to the kahoot. Um, when somebody's doing the qada fast, they should do the niyyah of doing the qada fast. If they do that qada fast on a special day, like let's say it's the 27th of Rajab, where it's highly recommended to fast, then they can do so still with the niyyah of doing that qada, but they can have hope in Allah that Allah will reward them a special reward for having done it on that day. Okay? And when it comes to Salatul Layl, Salatul Layl has its own niyyah, and qada prayers has its own niyyah. And they're two different niyyahs. Okay. All right. And inshallah, I am noting the questions down, and inshallah, we will try to incorporate some of the other ones in our future sessions if Allah gives us a tawfiq, inshallah. At this point, I would like to invite you to log into Kahoot, and I'm going to be sharing the code in just a bit here, inshallah. Let me start it. Two eight five 984. 285 984.
وآمنوا سخطه عند كل شيء.
You can see it here, right?
يا من يعطي من لم يسأله ومن لم يعرف تحننا منه ورحمة أعطني بمسألتي إياه جميع خير الدنيا وجميع خير الآخرة واصرف عني بمسألتي إياه جميع شر الدنيا وشر الآخرة فإنه غير منقوص ما أعطيت وزدني من فضلك يا كريم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام والإكرام يا ذا النعماء والجود يا ذا المن والطول حرم شيبتي على النار
Okay.
برحمتك يا
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So,
اللهم صل
thank you all
على
for joining us this evening.
محمد
We're going to be starting just a bit here. I think there's 5 questions tonight or 6. All but one of them are based on the presentation today and the one 4 weeks ago. One of them is based on the lecture that maybe some of you heard on Sunday night. We had the Shahada of Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salam. So just one question based on that as well. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to begin our Kahoot. Oh, just one last thing. One last thing is that some of the questions are timed for 30 seconds, some of them are timed for 60 seconds, because I got some feedback saying that sometimes it takes too long. I try to keep those questions that are easier at 30 and the other ones at 60, but please do note that and make sure that if you don't, at least choose something before the time expires, okay? So we are going to start our Kahoot. This famous structure was built by the Caliph al-Mutawakkil la'natullahi alayh. Okay, so most of you got it. Great. This is the mosque of the Grand Mosque of Samarra. We had talked about on Sunday night. At that time it was the biggest mosque in the whole world, and you can see here like the minaret design where it's like spiraling. Now, that design it apparently inspired other mosques. Like you can see these other 2 pictures here of mosques in Iraq, and recently or right now there's a construction of this huge mosque in United Arab Emirates. And even there, if you look at the minarets carefully, you can see that they are actually using the same design. They were inspired. Oh, sorry, this one on the lower left is actually a church somewhere in the United States where they use the same design. They were inspired by that design from that mosque over there. Al-Mutawakkil, he didn't care about killing people and he didn't care about oppression, but he did care about buildings. And even though he wasn't a great builder, he had like 20 palaces and he built this mosque and other things. So anyway, that's a bit of history. And after our first question, we have Mu'min, and then Mahdi, and then Zahra and Hawra and Hassan Falahati, the 2 Falahatis, mashallah, in the first 5. Great. Number 2, a dog dips its paw into a jug of water. How can I make the jug tahir? Okay, so I think that most of you have answered it already, so maybe I should just skip forward, huh? Let's see. Okay, I'll wait. Yeah, I think okay, good. All right, so the answer, which most of you did get, first clean with pure earth and then remove the earth and wash 3 times. Okay, so that cleaning with pure earth is moving around the sand and then dumping it out. So now we have Mu'min is still number 1, and we have Fatima Sugra, Mufti, Abu Layth, and Nabila and Noor. They are moving up. Okay, question number 3. A famous dessert has a small amount of wine in its filling. Can I eat it? Okay, so the answer is none of the above, which almost everyone got, because we've said many times that even if it's a small amount, because it's from a grape source, because it's fermented and it's brewed from grapes, no, it would not be allowed to eat. So we have Mu'min has gone to number 2, and we have Fatima Sugra now at the top. Mufti Batul is awesome. Yes, she is awesome. Yes, Noor, number 5. Okay. Question number 4, multi-select. What reasons were presented for why ethyl alcohol would not be najis? You do get partial credit, but try to select all the reason or reasons that apply. Okay, so this one was a bit tricky. Let's see. So the answer is all 3 of them, right? We talked about all 3. One of, like, there's some marjas like Adil Sani who say that first of all, look at if it's ethyl alcohol is from like corn. It's something which is, or from biomass. It's not from grapes and barley. And then there's the other 2 reasons about that we mentioned a few times. So after 4 questions, we have Mufti Abu Layth is at the top here, and Batul is continuing her streak, and Mu'min is number 3, Jasim and MBM. And the last question, double points here, true or false. Okay, so it's your chance to catch up. Water can be used for making najis things tahir. Therefore, coconut water can be used to clean something najis. Is that true or false? This is a review from 4 weeks ago. Okay, well, okay, almost everyone got that one. Even though it is water, you can't call it water alone. You have to call it coconut water. And so that's the difference. If it can be called water, then it's fine. But because it can't be called water, you could have water which is has some mud in it. You could have water which has salt in it, but it's still called water. But coconut water can't just be called water. So the answer is false. So after 5 questions, we have in 3rd place, Batul is awesome. Great job, Batul. And in 2nd place, Momin, and 1st place we have, is it Mufti? It is Mufti. Okay, good job, Mufti. And in 4th and 5th place, we have Jasim and MBM. And congratulations to all of you. May Allah accept your efforts. May Allah guide us to learning about our religion and inshallah putting that into practice. You can leave some feedback um, if you'd like and kind of indicate how that experience was for you. And thank you very much for your participation this evening. May Allah keep all of you safe. May Allah grant us afiyah and well-being in our physical health and our spiritual health in this world and the hereafter. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.